Oftentimes, good storytelling takes moments to slow down the progress of the plot to build up potential conflicts, allegiances, and divisions between characters so that when you get to big moments of payoff, they are meaningful. And I believe that that is what's going on in this week's episode of House of the Dragon. The second episode continues to be good, although I have to say that I think they might have missed out on a small opportunity here, and we're going to talk about that in this week's review and analysis of House of the Dragon. So let's jump in and recap the plot of the episode real quick. There will be spoilers ahead, so you have been warned. If you don't want any spoilers, this is your official spoiler warning. So when the episode starts off, we're introduced through context clues that this is taking place 6 months after the events of the first episode. We see that Rhaenyra is still serving as the cupbearer underneath the king and are given some illusion that there hasn't really been any type of grooming in order to get her ready to rule, but she's kind of stuck doing the same stuff she was doing before she was named successor to the throne. Corlys Velaryon is highly concerned by an adversary known as the Crab Feeder who has moved on into the Stepstones and is causing issues and could potentially negatively impact the trade line, and that could be a detrimental thing to his house, and he is asking for the king to take some troops and move against this adversary, to which Viserys is highly opposed because he wants to avoid war at all costs. And speaking of Viserys, he's very much the focal character within this episode as he continues his journey as king, but he is doing it as a single man, and there is a lot of pressure in order for him to remarry and potentially produce an heir. And he's faced with the proposal from Corlys and Rhaenys Velaryon to wed their daughter and potentially create a pure bloodline of Targaryens and Velaryon going forward. The only problem is it's really creepy. Their daughter Laena is only 12 years old. And while he's given this proposal from Corlys and Rhaenys, it is very clear that he is making a connection with Alicent Hightower, the daughter of Otto, who is the hand of the king, who has basically used his own daughter to try and get her in the position of power, thus advancing his own family to potentially rule. Meanwhile, we find out that Daemon has gone renegade, going to Dragonstone, deciding that he is going to marry his mistress, and stealing a dragon egg from the castle causes a necessary confrontation, which Viserys would like to go to, but instead, Otto Hightower goes and confronts Daemon, and Otto is the absolute worst person to send because Daemon can't stand him. But lo and behold, Rhaenyra decides to take her dragon and fly to Dragonstone and have a conversation with her uncle, basically saying, hey, let's not shed any blood over this. Let's do this the right way. And eventually Daemon decides to stand down, giving her the egg and walking away from confrontation. The episode concludes with two revealing things. The King Viserys decides not to wed young Laena of the Velaryon family, but instead decides that he is going to take Alicent Hightower as his wife, thus shocking Rhaenyra because they are best friends, and now she is in a spot of devastation, not knowing what to do. And we cut to another scene with Corlys and Daemon entering into an agreement where they're going to work together to take out this adversary in the Stepstones and probably begin making their moves to gain more power. So with that being said, I want to talk about the things that worked well in this episode first. I think that it is interesting the various different political allegiances and divisions that are being built up within this episode. Obviously, Rhaenyra feels betrayed by her father because she had no idea that this stuff was going on behind the scenes between he and Alicent. Daemon and Corlys are going to come together and probably work towards a common goal, but with very different intentions. You see a side of Daemon where it shows that he doesn't really have much respect for his brother as a king, but he still does love him in a weird way, even going as far as to act out against his brother, but when Corlys says things that are condescending to him, he defends Viserys. So you are really questioning what in the world is going on with Daemon and his motivations. And then, of course, you have to deal with the dynamic of Otto and Viserys, which I find to be an enjoyable one because we, as the audience, all know that this guy, Otto Hightower, is definitely working against the king, but the king blindly trusts him with just about everything, and we are just watching it all go down, just saying, hey, don't trust this guy. Bad things are probably going to happen from doing so, and I find that to be interesting. And another thing I think this episode does well is give this unsettling feeling about how royal bloodlines are intended to be kept pure in these marriages that are done out of political allegiance with really no care for the people involved in these marriages. People really not taking the king's consideration in for his mourning and maybe wanting to marry somebody he loves, as well as individuals willing to volunteer their very young children in order to go to gaining political power. Now, a couple critiques that I have of things that I don't think worked quite as well is that the plot progression is pretty small and slow. A lot of these allegiances and divisions that are going on could probably be predicted going in, especially with the context clues of the first episode, as well as just the things we've seen in the marketing material. These last 2 episodes I would consider to be pretty predictable, and we're yet to get to a point in the show where we experience something that's truly like surprising or intriguing or something we haven't seen from marketing or trailers. However, it does speak to the show's good execution because I still think this whole entire episode is pretty enjoyable to watch. And my next critique is somewhat of a small nitpick, but I found it kind of hard for me to suspend my disbelief when Rhaenyra shows up to Dragonstone to talk to Daemon, and they have a cordial conversation, basically leading this exchange to be able to get the dragon's egg back without getting any battle. The thing that I found interesting was not so much her getting there or the exchange, but when she came back, that was the first realization that anybody had that she had left the castle, and the message only got to the king upon her return. I feel like because she has a personal bodyguard who follows her around everywhere, as soon as she goes renegade and just flies off on a dragon all on her own, that would be immediately reported to the king and would cause an instant reaction. But when that scene happened and they have their exchange and their discussion and him explaining to her how it is so important that his heirs are not in danger and that she is his only heir and that is very important to him, I thought that was a heartfelt discussion, and through that you eventually get her willing to accept the reality that her father is going to have to remarry, and then the hammer hits at the end where she finds out it's not the person she was expecting it to be. And the last thing that I want to point out here is that I think there might have been a small missed opportunity with this episode of the show. I'm not saying that it's bad because I enjoyed it quite a bit, and this isn't a huge issue, but I think there would have been a good opportunity to make the case that this is must-see TV, giving us something that really gave us good drama or really good scenes, or just making an argument that, hey, you got to be invested in these characters week after week after week. This episode makes a case to us that it's going to be more of a slower burn, a slower pace, and so it actually might be enjoyable to take in larger chunks, so that if you want to subscribe to HBO Max after a few episodes are done, or even when the whole season's done, that might be a better way to enjoy the show. But I don't think that it's going to hugely negatively impact the show, but it would have been great if we just had an absolute sell that, hey, this is going to be exciting, it's going to be intriguing, there's going to be a lot of backstabbing, there's going to be a lot of moments that you aren't going to see coming. But to this point, we haven't really got that within House of the Dragon, but I do believe that they are working on setting up something that is really going to satisfy audiences. but only time will tell. And for this week, I am going to give the episode a final score of a 3 out of 5. I think that it was definitely worth watching. I enjoyed it. It didn't disappoint me, but it didn't overly impress me. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this review. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like more of these reviews, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you want some long-form reviews and retrospectives, check out our podcast. You can find the link in the description down below. I will be back here talking about Rings of Power in a couple of days, and I have a lot of other fun videos coming out that have to do with Lord of the Rings in the days to come. Please check those out if you get a chance. Have a fantastic day, and I will talk to you next time on Parallel Quest. Bye-bye.